Right, we're going to kick off then with this part. So this is obviously really important part of being a gym instructor, the whole client consultation process, because we can't do anything with a client until we've consulted with them and find out exactly why they're with us in the first place. So the first part of this webinar is all about your worksheet, your assignment, supporting clients. So in your Google Drive folder, you've got another little worksheet. It's 40 questions. There's 38 marks available for this one. You've got to get 31 marks in total to achieve a pass. So you can drop 7 marks on that. But as always, every question's got a minimum pass mark, so check that as well. And we've got a guidance document for this on your study portal. So like with all the other worksheets, everyone's got different learning styles. It's good to obviously watch and be present for this webinar, but then it's always good to then read the relevant section of the manual to reinforce it. Although, getting you through the assignments is really important, you want to make sure you absorb this and remember it and learn it well too. So this word scope of practice comes up quite a lot in your level 2 gym course, and also it's mentioned in level 3 personal training, level 3 strength and conditioning. So it's all about understanding really which clients you are qualified or competent to work with and which ones you're not. So generally, gym instructors, personal trainers, we are qualified under these qualifications to work with people that don't have any severe sort of medical conditions or need to be rehabilitated from an injury. Obviously, if somebody needs to be rehabilitated from injury, that's a physio's job. So that's considered out of your scope of practice. Now, sometimes people get confused over this terminology because it doesn't mean you're breaking laws. So the term personal trainer, the term nutritionist, they're not legally protected terms. So the term doctor, if you call yourself a doctor, that is a legally protected term. And if you're not a doctor and you're calling yourself a doctor, you are breaking the law. With personal training, gym instruction, nutritionist, they're not. But what organizations do, like Reps and SimSpa, is they try and come up with almost like a code of conduct that suggests what is within someone's scope of practice and what isn't. And all that means is if you start operating in a manner that could be considered to be out of your scope of practice, you put yourself in a vulnerable position that if someone does hurt themselves, they've got good grounds to prosecute, really. So, like I said, not breaking the law, but showing that you're negligent in your job role.
Would your insurance cover you for that, or is that you on your own?
It should, but yeah, just be careful with stuff like that because there's people that work for insurance companies that get paid a lot of money to try and find out ways to get out of paying up on insurance. So insurance should. I haven't heard too many horror stories, but it doesn't mean there aren't those stories out there really. So clients with certain medical conditions or multiple cardiovascular disease factors, which we'll come to in a bit, what that means, ideally should be referred to a level 3 exercise referral instructor or maybe a level 4 specialist instructor. Doesn't mean you can't give advice. So if someone says to you, I've got high blood pressure, what would be really good for me? Well, if you made it clear and said, well, look, I'm not a specialist in working with people that have hypertension, but I know that aerobic activity, as long as it's not high intensity, it's very, very good for reducing, normalizing blood pressure. So, being active is going to be very good for you, but always consult the doctor first. High-risk clients may also need clinical supervision. So if you've got a client that you just think, well, they say they haven't got anything wrong with them, but maybe it's just not being diagnosed. This client's obese, they've got a family history of heart disease, they're quite old, that's quite a lot of risk factors. So here's some examples. Anyone with cardiovascular disease, perhaps they've suffered with a stroke in the past, they might have cancer or suffered cancer, type 1, type 2 diabetes, Parkinson's disease, neurological conditions such as multiple sclerosis, if they've got an eating disorder, or if they're suffering dementia or Alzheimer's. So that's not an exhaustive list. There might be some other conditions that are going to be out of our scope of practice as well. But they're just ones to, if they get shown up when you're doing your consultation or flagged up, is probably to refer them to the doctor just to check that they're being monitored and they're still happy for them to exercise. So really that very initial part of a consultation is all about assessing risk. So we're trying to establish before we do anything else, am I actually competent and qualified to work with this client? Am I going to put them at any risk? Can I actually help them effectively? So we do the screening first. Once we've got that information, we can then make a judgment from that. And the first tool that you're probably going to use there's two names. It always used to be called a PAR-Q. Does anyone know what a PAR-Q stands for?
No.
It's Physical Activity Readiness Questionnaire. So it's just a few questions where they answer yes or no, which basically suggest whether they're at a higher risk of exercising or not. And the old advice used to be, if they say yes to any question, refer them to their doctor. And that's changed a little bit in recent years. And because, well, for a start, the strain and pressure that's on the NHS at the moment, and even before what's going on now, they're trying to limit quite so many referrals back to the doctors all the time. So they are letting people make some decisions for themselves. So they introduced this form called the Get Active Questionnaire. So if you just give me a moment, I'm just going to pull one up for you guys to have a look at it. So it puts the onus on the client a bit more, where you'll notice if you're joining gyms and what have you, you don't necessarily have to go answer yes or no to a load of questions. You can just tick a box and go straight in there. So the new Get Active Questionnaire allows them to, even if they say yes to a question, they can kind of go ahead and exercise without consulting their doctor first. And then we go on to something called a risk stratification tool. So let's have a look at that. So risk stratification is actually about having a variety of different risk factors and then classifying somebody as whether they're low, moderate or high risk. Now, we obviously want to avoid working with high-risk clients because we're not qualified to work with high-risk clients, and generally they should be exercising in what we call a clinically supervised environment, like a hospital. So, Irwin Risk Stratification Tool, there's one in your manual. So in section 4, you've got page 10 to 11. There's a few examples of one, but probably the most recent up-to-date one is the 2014 one, and I'll go through it with you now, but it's basically getting a client and just seeing where they fit based on their risk factors. So if you've got a client that's overweight, but there's no complications other than that, then that's low risk. You don't need to worry about that. If somebody's got blood pressure that's slightly elevated, but it's still in what we call high normal. So you can see the ranges there, 130 to 139 over 85 to 89. That's up a little bit, but that's still considered, normal, but just high normal. So we don't need to worry about that. If they're deconditioned, basically meaning they're not in very good shape, that could be due to their age or just the fact they've been inactive. So that's still what we consider to be low risk. Type 2 diabetes, if it's controlled by diet, then we're okay with that. That's low risk. If they're an older adult, so they're over the age of 65, but they don't have too many other coronary heart disease risk factors, so as in like they don't have the family history of it, they don't have high blood pressure as well, then they would still be considered low risk. Antenatal, as well. So if they're, that's where they're currently pregnant, prenatal, that's okay. We can't specialise working with pregnant clients, so we can't, put posters up telling us that we're the go-to person for prenatal without further training or further qualifications. But we can still work with them, as long as they haven't got a history of miscarriage or anything like that. So you get the idea anyway, guys. So if you get a client, you can use this to add that extra layer of, assessing risk. Really, is anything that gets flagged up on the PARQ form is then just refer to this Irwin and Morgan risk stratification tool to check they are still low risk. And then you've got some examples of what medium risk and then what high risk are as well. So obviously the high risk ones you definitely want to stay away from. But, doesn't necessarily mean you have to work with anyone. I mean, if you've got somebody that's moderate risk, and even if the doctor says they're happy for them to work with you, if you ever feel like, I just don't feel confident or competent to work with this client, you don't have to. There's no law that says that, just because you're qualified, you have to work with every single client. It's all about whether you feel that you're competent to. So never be afraid to refer to a more experienced client. Okay. It's going to move on to something called signposting now, because this terminology as well gets people confused, because you've got referring clients, but then you've also got signposting clients. Does anyone know the difference between what that means? What's the difference between referring a client and signposting a client?
The referral would be if they've been recommended by another PT or something, maybe, in signposting, I'm guessing, as they've just seen you about on posters or something like that, maybe.
It's the other way around, actually. So if you're so when I'm talking about referring and signposting, I mean when you might refer somebody.
Oh yeah.
And when you might signpost them. So what's the difference there?
Is referral, is that a sort of more official way of doing it? You're actually sort of passing on to someone else, whereas signposting, you're just sort of giving them advice.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I think was that Lynn?
Yeah,
kind of. Yeah, so referral is a bit more formal because it's more, actually, I'm not qualified, I'm not the best person for you to work with here, or I'm not qualified or competent to work with. And typically you refer someone to a GP, even though the GP is probably then going to refer them on somewhere else. If it could be that the GP refers them on to a dietitian or refers them on to a physio. But if it's anyone that you're not qualified or competent to work with, you tend to refer them to the GP. Signposting, like you said, is a little bit more informal. And it's more, actually, is there some other services or other individuals that this client's going to benefit from? So you can still work with them, but there's actually some other areas that you think they would benefit from as well. So that could be, alcohol support services. If your client has, disclosed to you that they drink too much and they're actually a bit concerned about it, then that's you might know of a local service, or there could be a support group that you want to refer them to. Signpost them to. So that's the difference there. So you're still going to work with them, but actually you'd also benefit from this service. Maybe a chiropractor, counselling, dietitian. So if you've got a private dietitian that you know of, that's very good, you've got a good relationship with, you could refer them, signpost them to them, sorry. You can actually send yourself off to a physio now. You don't need to go to your GP, do you? You can go straight to the physio yourself. Smoking cessation services might be a sports massage therapist, or if you know of a specialist instructor that works with clients that have lower back pain or diabetes or whatever, you could signpost them to them as well. Okay, we're going to talk a bit about motivation now. So just give you a little moment to ponder this for a bit. What actually is motivation? So give it some thought. And then when you're ready, just chuck some ideas in your chat box. What is motivation? Okay, so Lynn, you got an example of what might motivate someone there to lose weight. Offer encouragement, drive to get something done, vision of end goals, and also a source that inspires you to improve and move forward. What drives a person to do a certain task, an urge to do something. Okay, to get healthy. All right, so you've got quite a few different ideas there. Brilliant. So with motivation, there's been tons and tons and tons of research done on it, and there's various little models out there. But one of the sort of the most basic ones, which I quite like, is it basically suggests that for somebody to be motivated, they need to have some different, I guess, pillars really. One of those is you need the desire for change. So you're not going to do anything unless you feel that the thing that you're going after is going to be of benefit to your life. So if we use weight loss as an example, because it's really common in the fitness world, it's what most people tend to join gyms for. You obviously in your head think, well, my life is going to be better if I lose weight. So that's the first thing, is that desire for change. The second one is you have to have the self-belief that you can actually do it, you can make it happen. So if anybody ever thinks, oh, I really want to lose weight, but I just can't do it, then they're not going to do it, are they? It's not going to happen. You've got to have that self-belief. And then the third one is they've got to believe that it's all going to be worth it, because sometimes you can think, well, I do want to lose weight, and I'm perfectly capable of doing it, I'm sure, but just don't want to go through that process at the moment. I don't like the idea of eating less food. I don't like the idea of exercising more. Just at the moment, it's just not worth it for me. So that's kind of the key things there. That desire for change. You've got to have the self-belief that you can do it, and you've got to decide that actually all this work is all worth it. And as a gym instructor or PT, you're kind of working on those things all the time. Now, this is something you've probably come across before as well. There's two different types of motivations. You've got extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation, has anybody got some examples of what extrinsic motivation might be?
Just the carrot and the stick.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, carrot and stick. So you're doing something to get a reward, aren't you? Or you're doing something for like an end goal. And that's worked really well for years, by the way. That's been, a very powerful form of motivation for most people for years. It's what gets people to go out and work. It's what it used to motivate kids in school. They would learn stuff because they would get a reward at the end, or they'd learn stuff because so they don't get a punishment at the end. And over time, it's been proven that's not as effective as it used to be. So what's intrinsic motivation?
Doing it for yourself.
You are doing it for yourself. You can still argue that extrinsic can be doing it for yourself too, because let's say was that Clay?
Yeah.
So let's say, Clay, that you're going to spend, May, if the gym's open again, you're going to spend May trying to get the biggest arms you've ever had in your life. You might decide that you really want big arms, and the extrinsic motivation is, after 6 weeks of hitting it hard, you might have bigger arms. That's still something for you because you've decided that's what you want. But what could make it more intrinsic?
Is it just because you enjoy it? Because you want
Yeah, that's the thing, really. With intrinsic motivation, you're actually doing it for the process, not the end goal. And your research, behavior science, is noticing more and more that people are becoming very, very intrinsically motivated, more so than extrinsic. It's starting to change. And I guess that's quite obvious with a lot of things now, isn't it? People are expecting to enjoy things a lot more, so people want to enjoy their job a lot more. People don't really like wasting time doing things that they don't get any enjoyment from any longer. So that's that's the way it seems to be going at the moment. Whether that's going to change or not, I don't know. But behaviour science is suggesting that people really need to enjoy the process. So it's definitely something worth making a note of when you're a gym instructor, that you've got to try and make that process as enjoyable as possible for that client.
Is that because they're less likely to quit then, John?
Yeah.
Because they're enjoying it.
Because they're enjoying it, yeah. If you, and this, you know, when you get a lot of fitness fanatics or sort of get on their pedestal and, you know, suggest that they're perhaps, you know, they've got to where they are from pure hard work and graft and what have you. And yes, there will have been some hard work and graft, but it could be that they actually just enjoy the process more. It's much easier to get out of bed and go and do something day in, day out if you enjoy it more than the other person. So it is very important to kind of consider that. Now, we've got this other thing called motivational interviewing. So this is a technique that you'll just get better and better at doing, is when you sit down with a client and you do the consultation with them, the idea is that when they leave the room after having a conversation with you, they're motivated. So it's thinking about all that stuff. So it's identifying where do they want to be, what's this change they want in their life, and then reinforcing actually why that's going to be so good for them. It's trying to get across to them that you're going to be with them during the process or the journey, and it's going to be a fun journey. There's going to be some challenges. It's going to be tough, but it's also going to be fun. There's going to be some real enjoyment to get from it. It's making sure they know that they're perfectly capable of achieving this, especially with the support network that they're going to build. And you know, they have all the power within them to achieve this goal. And you can only do that if you build a rapport with a client. So this is why I quite like that whole sitting down face to face, going through the paperwork with a client, because it gives you a chance to start just chatting with them and getting to know them and building rapport before you get them into that scary gym environment. So how do you go about building a rapport with your clients? What sort of stuff is really good for building rapport?
Like you said last time, like eye contact, remembering their first name, just speaking to them like you would do one of your own mates, kind of thing.
Yeah, good. So having good basic sort of social skills, isn't it? Good communication, all the good body language that you mentioned there, Wilf. Anything else, guys?
Trust. They believe what you're saying.
Trust, absolutely. You've got to be authentic, haven't you? You've got to be yourself, and you've got to be real, and then they'll trust you.
Getting to know them on a personal level, their likes and dislikes.
Yeah, that's it. So that's helping to sort of really connect with them, that is, isn't it? And the other thing is empathy. So when you're with a client, if you understand them, or if they think that you understand them, then they'll much more naturally build that rapport with you. Everybody kind of wants to be understood. So if they're talking about the challenges they've had over the past, and if you can relate to that and you're sensitive to that, then they're definitely going to build a stronger connection with you. Yeah, that's it, Will. Just in your comment there, being interested in their personal goals in life. Yeah, so genuine enthusiasm towards what they want to achieve. And now the other thing is, obviously, when somebody sits down with you and they come to you for a consultation, they don't necessarily know what the hell they're about to be going through. They don't really know what's involved. And it's just making that clear to them from the start, saying, okay, what we're going to do today is I'm just going to ask you a series of questions, and it's all about really getting to know you and what you want. There's none of these questions you have to answer if you don't want to. So if anything makes you feel uncomfortable, we can just pass on the question and move to the next one. But more information you give me, the better I understand you, and the more I can help you achieve your goals. So it's always good to discuss that agenda with them first. Find out what sort of readiness to change they're at as well. So there's something called the trans-theoretical model of behaviour change, which I'll go through the stages with you in a moment. But it's a very sort of tried and tested model, really, for helping people change their behaviours. Once you know what stage they're at, you can then tailor your intervention. So you'll get to know where that person quite well and what works well for them. And obviously always close on a positive. It's got to be hard that first time someone gets in contact with a gym instructor or a personal trainer and arranges that consultation. Some people are probably going to be quite anxious leading up to that appointment. So it's all about you kind of making them feel great for it and confident they've made the right decision. Not leaving going, oh God, he worked out my BMI and I'm obese and he told me my diet's terrible and I drink too much and I don't want to go back. Okay, so we've got different stages of behaviour change. So whether you're wanting to become more physically active, improve your diet, give up heroin, whatever your tipple is, then you've got different stages of change. So the first stage, we call it pre-contemplation. So any ideas, what would be a way to sort of define the pre-contemplation stage?
Just kind of, they got the idea in their head, oh, I might like to do this, but it hasn't actually manifested into motivation itself just yet.
It's actually before even that, so it's pre-contemplation. So
realising there's an issue?
Yeah, people just not even bought into the idea. So, you don't get so many of these days, but there are still a few people that don't think exercise is important and it's not something they're even interested in changing. They're quite rare these days. I think the messages get coming across quite clearly now that everyone can benefit from being active, especially now that there's a big emphasis on the mental health side of things with exercise. But there will still be some people that go, yeah, don't need that. I'm fine, thank you. So they're the pre-contemplation guys. Now, what do we do as a society to try and get pre-contemplation people to actually start thinking about being more physically active?
Benefits of exercise?
Yeah, we highlight everything they've got to gain from being physically active. So they talk about the pain and the gain. So the gain is all the positive stuff. So how much better is somebody's life going to be if they have exercise in it? So what are some of the things we could list there?
Improve in mood.
Yeah, you're going to feel happier. And this is a really important one because literally every day is better if you've got some form of good sensible exercise in it. So who does not want that? So that's a good one.
Prolong your life.
Health and happiness. Sorry, what was that?
A longer life, prolong your life.
Yeah. Do you know what if you meet the government recommendations for exercise, do you know what effect that has on longevity, like from a percentage point of view?
No.
So you reduce your risk of premature death by 30%. So it's quite.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, longer life. Anything else?
Thought the bone density one was interesting.
Yeah, that's good. That one, isn't it?
Bones.
Reducing your risk of osteoporosis and fracturing bones and injuring yourself when you fall over. What effect does it have on your kind of social life? Or can it? What effect can it have on your social life?
Confidence.
Yeah. When you're physically fitter, they often talk about strong in mind, strong in body, don't they? When you've got physical fitness, it sometimes kind of spills over into that, the mind fitness as well.
Yeah.
A lot of it, I think, is self-efficacy, that term where once you've achieved a goal, you then go, oh, I made that happen. I did that. I wonder what else I could do, and it grows, really.
You've got the social side of things as well, haven't you? Joining a gym, new group of people, similar interests.
Yeah, because you go to group exercise, don't you, Nick? And that's a big social element to that, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's really important. So there's loads. I mean, you could talk for hours about all the good stuff that people can get from exercise. So that's the gain, and then like we said, the pain. If there's messages out there that say, you know, if you don't exercise regularly enough, then you're more likely to suffer with mental health issues. You're more likely to get dementia when you're older. You're more likely to get heart disease. And there's lots of negative stuff to talk about as well. And although it's negative, unfortunately, it is the reality.
Mm.
So we've got a lot of people at the contemplation stage. So this is, I would say you've got a lot more of these guys than you have of the pre-contemplation. So contemplation people, these are people that are going, yeah, I should be more active. I should go to the gym and I should do this, but they don't. Why don't they?
They haven't got the time.
Yeah, they have barriers. So we call them barriers. You know, whether they're real barriers or psychological barriers or not, they're still barriers. They're still getting in the way of people becoming physically active. So yeah, Will's put their excuses and barriers. Okay, so what would be some strategies to get people to move on from stop thinking about it and crack on and make it happen?
It's a tricky one because it kind of shows it for itself once they do it. Like once you do it and you realize how good it feels, then that's pretty much all the motivation you need.
Yeah, it's easy to get the momentum going, isn't it? Once you start seeing results.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe a bit of, as you were saying earlier, John, empathy, like if you're talking to someone like that, maybe you could be like, well, you know, I used to actually feel the same. Like I was like, I need to do exercise, but then I went ahead and did it. And
yeah, I agree. Absolutely. I think I've said before about when you're in this, because you're much further up these steps here. You know, if you're exercising regularly, you've gone through this, you've gone through the pre-contemplation and the other steps, but you're actually in a really good place compared to the majority of the population. So a lot of what you're doing now is habitual, and we take that for granted. We forget that. And to be where these guys are, it is tough. You know, just taking on any new habit is really, really, really tough. So we definitely want to empathise with that, because that's not going to help anyone at all if they just feel that they're a failure or, you know, there's something wrong with them. So we just need to find out, okay, what is it that's getting in the way? What's a strategy to get around that? So if it's a time thing, it could be just helping them schedule exercise into their life. You know, you almost become a bit of a life coach when you're a PT, because it's even things like, well, you know, have you tried putting it in your diary as a physical appointment, an appointment with yourself? You know, 30 minutes, 3 times a week, whatever it may be, stick it in the diary. And stuff like that helps people. And just having an exercise professional explain to them how important this stuff is, and actually it's okay for you to put yourself first. This shouldn't be at the bottom of your priority list. That can make a difference. So we've got solutions to barriers, and we'll go through that a bit more when we come to actually doing the forms, you know, of what the typical barriers are out there. But getting those solutions, and that moves them on to preparation. So what do you think the preparation stage is?
but preparing to actually go ahead and exercise.
Yeah, what could that look like? What sort of preparation might they have done?
They may have gone out and bought a new gym kit if they don't have any.
Yeah, definitely.
Membership or whatever.
Yeah, they could have signed up to the gym, bought some trainers, bought some new gear. So they've definitely done something active towards starting this new behaviour. But unfortunately, some people they stall at this stage and they don't get any further. And we've probably all done things like this where we've bought stuff and never used it. And
yeah,
I think we said exercise bikes, didn't we, the other week, last week? Exercise bikes and homes that just turn into clothes horses. You know, stuff like that's really, really common. So people just get stuck at that stage. So if we've got somebody that's gone through the preparation stage, what would be some ways to help them keep going onto that where they actually do then engage in the exercise? What can we do?
Make them buy something really expensive so they got
Well, actually, funny you should say that, but yeah, research does show that the more money people pay for the stuff, the more likely they are to use it. But that's why a lot of, with PT, if you get people to pay for block bookings up front, they've just bought 10 sessions, then they're much more, well, they're going to do the 10 sessions, aren't they? They're not going to, not just going to not turn up.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a good point, Will.
It's
Will,
good to have a buddy so you can encourage each other.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, much more like that. So Will put in the chat box, make the gym environment a fun place they want to be in. So training with a buddy, like you're saying, Nick, is definitely going to make it, they're going to be excited to go and spend the afternoon or the morning with their friend.
Yeah.
So they're more like to do it. Anything else?
I don't think.
Maybe even like writing out their schedule for the day. So it's like, oh, get up first thing, I'm going to exercise, then I'm going to do this and this, and like, does that make sense? Like,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, like it's just planning it into the schedule, like appointments. But a lot of organisations, what they do is, so actually, I'll give you an example. When we used to do the exercise classes, when I was talking about the PARQ form thing, we download it, they bring it to the class. Well, what it used to trigger a few actions. So when somebody downloaded our form, at first, we would see all these forms getting downloaded, but people weren't necessarily coming to the class. And I'd be like, what's going on? We're getting all these forms, but no one's coming along. Well, not no one, we get people, but not as many as the forms. So I was like, we're losing people there. So then what we did was, when someone downloaded a form, we just added another little step where we then ring them up to say, you know, hi, I'm John from Storm Ultimate Fitness. I noticed you downloaded our PARQ form. When would you like to start your new class? I'm going to be there Saturday morning. Is that a good time? That's when and they'll be like, oh, right, okay, hold on, let me just talk to my husband, and then kind of figure it all out. And I'll be like, okay, brilliant. Well, I'll just ping you a little email just to confirm the appointment or whatever, and I'll see you there 5 minutes early, just so I can have a quick look at your form, and I can introduce you to the rest of the guys. And you know, it's John, so just, you know, say hello when you arrive. And we added that one small step in, and it shot up. So where people would do the preparation for them was downloading the PARQ form, and they wouldn't go any further. But by me nurturing them, they would then turn up to the class. So it's just little things like that. So then once someone's engaged in that new behaviour, so this new behaviour we're talking about is being physically active, and they're now at what we call the action stage. And you're at that stage for 6 months before it becomes what we call maintenance. So maintenance is then maintenance of the new behaviour. So what things can we do to ensure that these guys last the 6 months?
So, encourage them to, so for example, the most common one being losing weight, ask them, like, encourage them to track their progress, so whether that's weighing themselves or maybe measuring themselves. Usually when you notice results like that, it keeps you exercising. Yeah,
you could say basically showing them, like, tracking as much data as you can, that in a manageable way. You don't want it to become like a chore for them or anything, but some way of giving them data that shows them it is working. So when they originally came to the gym, why did they come? Now show me that I'm actually getting what I'm coming. And you're right, it could be weigh-ins. So they could be doing weigh-ins at the gym on a Monday morning and just logging that somewhere. So as a gym instructor, you could say to your clients, there's loads of apps you can download that are free where you can just track your weight. It'll give you a nice little graph. MyFitnessPal has it automatically as part of that application, so you can do it on there. So get them to do stuff like that. Showing them, encouraging them to log the weights they're lifting, and then they can see over time how that improves or increases. When you do a program review of a client, you'll be able to show them everything they've achieved over those 4 weeks or 6 weeks or whenever you do it. So it's definitely showing them results. Anything else?
Yeah, just keep things interesting, change it up so they're not doing the same thing all the time.
Yeah. So that's that variety of making it fun and enjoyable. and building the relationship. So continue to build a good relationship with the client, but also kind of bring them into the tribe almost. So like I'm thinking about yours, Nick, actually. So it's the boxing thing you go to, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's very much like a tribe, isn't it?
It is a bit, yeah.
So I mean that in a nice way, you know, not a tribe, not a cult. So like you guys are all in there together, you're all learning the same stuff, you like each other's company. It'll get to a point where a lot of the people going to that class, they're no longer going for the fitness anymore. I mean, that might be maintenance, but they're going along to see people, to connect with people.
Yeah, there is an element of that, definitely.
So you can almost say the action stage, results and relationships, really, making it a nice environment. So they're intrinsically motivated by the relationships and the nice environment, and then extrinsically motivated by the results.
Yeah.
And then maintenance, like I said, once you've been doing this stuff for 6 months plus, you're at a really good stage because you're much less likely to quit there. So most people, well, if we use gyms as an example, over 50% don't make it to the maintenance stage. It's a big number, isn't it?
Yeah.
And gyms do rely on that. You know, they can't, the memberships they sell, if everybody went, the gym's not big enough. So they do rely on that. But yeah, if people stick to it for 6 months, by then you can safely say it's habit, and you're not going, oh, I must exercise, and oh, I must try and squeeze that in somewhere, because you've been squeezing it in for 6 months. It's kind of happening. That being said, we're all vulnerable to what we call a relapse. So you can fall off the wagon, however you want to call it, at any stage really, and maintenance is still possible. All right, let's move on to different health and fitness assessments. So when you've got a client, as a gym instructor, I'll be completely honest with you, it's very, very rare that gym instructors actually do any kind of health and fitness assessments. They generally don't. It's part of your qualification, but they don't tend to. What they might do is height, weight, BMI, if the client asks, and maybe test their resting pulse and their blood pressures. They're kind of health markers, really. Now, if we look at checking somebody's resting pulse, for example, if they've got a resting pulse that's above 100, that's known as tachycardia. Have anyone heard that expression before, tachycardia?
No.
Well, it's considered a health risk, so it's a high resting pulse. So the doctor kind of wants to check them out first to make sure that there's nothing underlying going on there. So that would be considered to be a contraindication to exercise, meaning it's too high for them to exercise without getting some advice from the doctor. So that's one reason you might do the resting pulse. With blood pressure, 160 over 100 is also a contraindication to exercise, so that's high blood pressure again. You can also track somebody's height and weight and do the BMI, or you could do their waist to hip ratio and find out if they're an increased risk from that as well. So they're just kind of like health markers, really. Gives you a nice little benchmark to start from as well. So somebody might have a goal of getting their waist smaller or getting the hip smaller, or their goal might be to get the blood pressure down or normalise it. When you've got that starting information, you can then write some goals, and what we call them SMART goals. So you'll remember those from the professionalism webinar. I'll go through SMART again later, but making sure the goal's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time.
Bring the trolley inside now.
It allows a more personalised exercise prescription because you know a bit more about that client, you've got a bit more information. It's quite a professional way of doing things, isn't it? So they're feeling like it's quite a thorough process. It gives you some more information to then educate the client a bit further. I personally find assessments quite motivational. But you do need to be, this is where the individuality side of things come in, because not everybody will. Some people will scare the life out of them. So what about you guys? Do you like doing assessments?
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Can't
can't
hear
hear very well.
I don't really know.
Do you want, who is that? Would you like me to mute you guys if it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who is it?
Oh my god, what's that? What is it?
It's you, Louis. Oh yeah, it was you, Louis.
Ah, not again.
No worries. Probably got your earphones in, I expect. Right, and indirectly.
Yeah, I like the tests. You can see your progress at the end of it. So I think they're worthwhile.
So do you like it personally then, Nick, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I do. I mean, for me, like I like data anyway, a bit geeky like that, but I like to see the numbers moving in the right direction. That isn't an extrinsic motivation. So some people maybe not interested in that at all. Others are like, look, I just want to go along to my exercise class and have a really good time and know that that's been good for me. I don't want to know about the numbers. And that there's no right or wrong, is there? It's just finding out what the individual likes. Lynn, I know you like it. You go to classes, don't you?
Yeah, I go to a lot.
So do you like just the sort of the buzz and enjoyment of going to class, or do you like data as well or not?
Yeah, I mean, I use Fitbit a lot, and the group of girls that I'm really friendly with, we're always sort of comparing, and so I guess we use that.
Yeah.
The camaraderie as well, like a lot of them are my really good friends now. We socialise, so and we
that's
each other as well.
I think most people do like a bit of data, don't they?
Yeah.
Okay, now just a reminder, there are some disadvantages. So when you are doing any sort of health and fitness stuff, some of the procedures can be invasive. Like if you're measuring somebody's waist and hips and they are very, very overweight, they might be really self-conscious, because you've got to get up quite close to do that, haven't you, and putting a tape measure around somebody. So just make sure that before you do any of this stuff, you make the client really aware of what it is they're doing and why. And if they look really uncomfortable with it, just make it really clear to them. Say, look, we don't need to get this data now if you don't want to. And you might find, I've done this before, where clients that their face is screwing up, and I've gone, look, let's not do it today. Don't worry about it. Let's just enjoy today. And literally a week later, they're like, can we do all those measurements we were going to do? Can we do those? Because after a week, they've got to know you, and they're like, oh, okay, I actually feel quite comfortable with this person now. Will, you like looking back at your recorded runs? Yeah, things like Strava and Runkeeper and that are great for that, aren't they? Showing you runs that you've done and your speed and everything. So that again, that data is quite helpful. Some tests are physically demanding and can cause injuries. So just make sure, if you guys go away and you do a bit of research and look at some of the other tests you can do online, because there literally are thousands of tests that you can do. Some of them are sort of maximal exertion tests, and anything that's maximum exertion can incorporate higher risk. So if you do a bleep test, even though the bleep test is progressive, we've taken somebody to maximum heart rate, there is an element of injury risk there. Poor results can have a negative effect on client motivation. So if you specifically with body composition data, so don't forget what's probably the most significant thing that's going to impact on somebody's body composition data.
Their diet and exercise, if they do any at all.
Yeah, the first one, diet. So you can give them the best exercise program in the world, but if they're going away and they're eating loads and they're eat too much, wrong foods, they could be way fitter, but when they get on the scales or when you test the body fat, their body composition is still no different, or it can be even worse. Some people end up eating more because they're exercising, and so just remember that, really bear that in mind. Candidates should be made aware that not all of the tests are suitable for all clients and that decisions need to be made on an individual basis. Now, it's tricky, this one, because with S&C coaches, they get used to working with very specific athletes or very specific teams. And what they'll do is they'll devise a battery of tests that will assess that specific athlete or that specific team. You know, because certain tests will show improvements in certain sport performances. And it is kind of nice when you have a business to just get really good at delivering a certain number of tests. So you've got a couple of options. You can every time you get a new client, pluck from an assortment of different tests and personalize it for that client, or you can go after as a very specific clients that you want to work with and use your test battery. In an ideal world, everyone have their own individual test battery, but you just got to think about doing things from a business point of view as well, that if you're constantly coming up with new tests, creating new infographics for everything, it's a lot to manage. But if you're going for all over fitness, some sort of cardiovascular fitness test is going to be a good one. Some sort of strength test, some sort of endurance test, some sort of mobility test. It's going to give you a kind of a nice overall assessment, really, of whether that person's moving in the right direction. If the tester is not competent, can lead to inaccurate results. So when you guys first start, you probably are going to make a few mistakes and not be great at some of these things that you test. And you just get better. More experience you do, the better you get. Some can be very time consuming, so to bear that in mind as well. You know, again, your manual will tell you that you've got to make sure you personalize everything as best as you can, and you know you're very thorough at this and you're very thorough at that, and they're right, but at the same time you've got to fit everything into your working week. So it might be that you decide that whatever fitness test you do, you can fit everything in within 45 minutes, and that way it's just one of your client sessions. Equipment can be expensive to buy and maintain, so bear that in mind as well when you're picking certain tests that you want to do on clients. You might find, I remember when I was younger, I got really into lactate testing blood lactate, and I thought, oh, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to really stand out from all the other PTs testing my clients' blood lactate. And the actual handheld gadgets were a few £100s at the time. And the little strip that you put in, they didn't last very long, so you have to buy new ones of those. And it's going to be really expensive. And I thought about it, and I was like, actually, do clients really care about that level of detail? No, they don't. So it was just a silly kind of idea I had. Whereas tape measures, super cheap, blood pressure monitors aren't expensive. You can get apps on your phone that do a lot of stuff now that's cheap as well. Clients may yield better results second time around as they can manipulate the test and know how to perform it through experience. So yeah, I mean, you just make notes on things. You're always going to get that. The first time a client does a test for you, even if it's a maximal exertion test, they probably won't go to maximal exertion. Whereas the second time, you know, they're a bit more, their subjective tolerance to discomfort's higher, so they'll probably go harder anyway. But that's fine. If it comes out that they've got a better result because of that, it's still an improvement. So when it comes to health, as a gym instructor, these are your go-to ones, really. So you'll probably do some sort of waist measurement, if they want it, if it's relevant. Resting blood pressure, that's a good one to do. As I said, it works out as a safety net as well. So you might flag up something that's never been flagged up because they haven't been to the doctors. You could potentially save someone's life. Resting heart rate. Height and weight, really easy to do. And then from that, you can calculate body mass index. And we will talk about the limitations of that because I know some of you are probably already listening to it. Body mass index, that's not relevant for everyone. So with resting heart rate, do you guys know what the average is for generalizing? So we don't go age specific or gender specific. What's an average resting heart rate?
between 60 and 70 beats per minute.
Yeah, it's about 70. So 60 to 80 is the range, but 70 is about average. But it does, data does show that it changes depending on the person's age and gender. So this is taken from the Essentials of Personal Training. So it's the National Strength and Conditioning Association book. And they've got some more specific results here. So this is a table that you could use if you wanted. And it just shows that when you measure someone's resting pulse, you can then, using the scale, so if I do mine, so I think mine this morning was something like 55. So where am I? I'm on here, I'm male. So when I scroll along, yeah, I'm here. So my resting heart rate would come out as excellent. So it's just a bit more specific for the age and for the gender. So what I would do for you guys is the tests that you're going to do on a regular basis, print out your tables for them and just have them in a separate little file or a folder that you can just go to really easily. Blood pressure as well, got a table here. So if somebody's blood pressure comes out as around the sort of 120 to 80 mark, then we know that that's kind of normal or optimal. We refer to that as, we've got the other classifications there as well. If it comes out as stage 1 hypertension, you don't necessarily have to refer them, but it probably is sensible for them to go and speak to the doctor. It might be that they have something called white coat syndrome. Does anyone know what that is?
Sorry, was that white coat, like COAT?
Yeah.
No idea.
There are doctors.
Yeah, it's where if you're anxious, your blood pressure goes up. So often when people go to the doctors, they suffer with white coat syndrome because they're doctors. So everyone generally feels a bit anxious, the doctors.
Hypochondriacs, basically.
Well, no, not necessarily hypochondriacs. It's just if you're anxious about something, your blood pressure is higher.
Yeah.
So I did like an unlicensed boxing bout years ago for charity, and we had to have a health check just before the fight. And they checked everyone's blood pressure, and everyone's blood pressure was high. And I was like, well, it's going to be, we're about to go and get our heads punched in. Like literally everyone, no one had a healthy resting blood pressure. So I kind of thought it was a bit pointless doing it, really. But everyone still got in the ring and fought. But so that would be an example of white coat syndrome, kind of. Now, another one you can do is body mass index. So this has been used for years and years and years by doctors and nurses and physios to get an indication of whether somebody is the right weight for their height and whether that poses any risk to their health. Now, it's pretty accurate for somebody that is inactive. So if somebody doesn't go to the gym and lift weights and what have you, it's going to be pretty active. But who is it not going to be suitable for?
Somebody trains a lot.
Yeah, so I don't know if you can read this bit here. Body mass index is not a suitable measurement for individuals with significant muscle mass. So it doesn't take into consideration what that body is composed of. So it just lumps everybody in the same category. And that's the downside to it. So as Will's put there, bodybuilders and strongmen, it would be a completely irrelevant test to do on a bodybuilder or a strongman, absolutely.
What's significant?
Who would be significant, did you say?
Sorry, what is significant? Muscle.
Like, as in what client?
No, like a percentage, presumably you're talking about?
Well, it's anyone that's inactive or, I mean, if somebody doesn't actually do any kind of strength training at all, doesn't do any kind of lifting, so they wouldn't have above average muscle mass, that's when it's relevant for all those clients.
Yeah, but it says not suitable for significant muscle mass. What is
Oh,
that?
sorry. Sorry, I see what you mean, as in what would be classed as it as a number. I wouldn't know how to put it into numbers, to be honest, but if somebody said to me, I mean, you can normally tell by just by looking at somebody, but I guess that's come from experience. But if somebody said to me, I go to the gym twice a week and they lift and they do weights, I would say even from that, it's probably not going to be very relevant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, mine is always overweight, verging on obese. And I've got
Yeah.
visible abs and everything, so that's
so
not good one.
it wouldn't be good for you. I mean, don't forget the average person that rings up a personal trainer, or, gets in contact for a consultation, doesn't have significant muscle mass. They're not training regularly. I mean, you don't have PT, do you, Clay?
No.
No, I'm not suggesting that people that are in good shape never have PT, but they're not the most common clients. It's those people that have never maintained a consistent routine of exercise tend to be the ones that are ringing up personal trainers.
Yeah.
You choose the right test depending on who you've got in front of you. So let's have a little go at this one anyway. So if you guys don't know what your height and weight is, then just make up a number. So what you're basically doing is taking your height in meters and then timesing it by itself. So I'll do mine. I'll show you. So I'm 1.8 meters. So I'm going to take 1.8 meters and I'm going to times that by itself. 1.8 times 1.8. And that comes out as 3.24. Then I take my weight in kilos, which is 90 kilos, and I divide that by my 3.24. So 90 divided by 3.24 equals 27.77. So if I look on that table, I'm between 25 and 30. So that means I'm classified as overweight. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, just have a little go at trying to do the maths. You don't have to share your result with everybody unless you particularly want to. But just see if you can do the equation, okay? So it's got to be your height in meters, not centimeters. It can't be inches or feet. So use Siri or something to convert it if you need to. That's the first bit you do. Then take your weight in kilos.
Yeah, mine's about 28, so over.
Yeah, so you're a fatty like me then.
That's it, mate.
Yeah, so Will said, for example, Eddie Hall is 164 kilos. Yeah, that is a good example of someone that's very, very heavy and going to come out as obese. But actually, Eddie Hall is a fatty as well. He says that himself, doesn't he? He's although he's slimmed down a lot since he stopped the strongman, but he admit himself, like, his body composition when he was a strongman was not healthy at all.
You wouldn't call him fatty to his face, though, would you?
Yeah, mine was like 27.
Yeah, so he's the same as me, aren't he? Yeah.
I've got 24.
So you guys are, don't forget, you guys are fitness enthusiasts. So PT clients, they want to be fitness enthusiasts. They're just not there yet. So, yeah, so some of you coming out with from a low result there. So you got the idea. I mean, to be honest, if maths isn't your thing, there's calculators now that do it online. There's apps that do it. So you don't necessarily need to do it. But once you get used to doing the equation, it's probably quicker just to get your calculators than to load up the app. Now, I do quite like this one. So this is just measuring waist circumference and then coming out with a result. So why would just measuring somebody's waist potentially be a more useful bit of data, do you think?
Because that's where a lot of our fat is stored.
Yeah, well, that's where the fat that we don't want tends to be stored, because that's where our organs are. So you've got subcutaneous fat, which is the fat that we kind of see on the surface, but then visceral fat is the fat that surrounds your organs. And if we have a lot of fat distributed around our waist, then that puts it at a higher risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, dementia, even some cancers. So that's really the one that we're most concerned with. So they've come up with a little table here where you can just measure the waist and then determine whether they're low, medium, or high risk. And this is a nice one to do. And yeah, using Eddie Hall as the example, Eddie Hall's waist is going to be probably not now, but back in when he was, right at the pinnacle of his career, he would have been coming out in the high risk department, I expect. But like I said, he admits himself that he was suffering with sleep apnea and all sorts. It's not a healthy body composition to have, really. But the other reason I quite like this one is because if you're a bodybuilder and you're going to be, your sport is about how you look aesthetically, well, those guys, they have to have small waists. So you could use this potentially on a bodybuilder still, because they do need to have a small waist for their sport. Okay, now one of your questions in your worksheet, it asks for you to give some examples of what some incentives could be to get them to join the gym. And one of the most common incentives that you see is a free trial. Most gyms offer free trials now, and it's that no obligation. You can have 7 days, it could be 1 day, it could be some gyms even do a whole month you can come along. And it's quite a common thing because basically the idea is they come to the gym, they love it, and then they go, yep, I'll sign up. And there's normally another incentive after that. So look, if you sign up at the end of your free trial, we waiver the joining fee. So the joining fee could be £50 and we waiver that. So that's what we call an incentive. Any ideas for any other incentives that you see gyms offering?
Classes.
As in free classes, free trial classes?
Yes, free classes, yeah.
Yeah, come and try a free class. Yeah, everyone does that. That's a good thing to do as well. First class free, or train with a friend for free.
Open days.
Do you say open days?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, especially someone like David Lawyer, where they've got all the facilities. You come and play some tennis, come and meet the coaches. That's an incentive. You can also offer discounts on block bookings. So whether that be with the personal trainer or whether that be a block of classes or whatever, that's always worth doing. Partner discounts as well. So if you join with your partner, sometimes some gyms, they give like 25% discount if it's coming out of the same bank account. Or maybe some sort of goodie bag. If you join today, you get an iPod with a gym towel and a training top. Okay, what about rewards? The incentive is to get you to join. Reward is something you get after you've done certain things. What could be an example of that?
An upgrade in your membership?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, if you perhaps achieved a certain goal, they could take you up to the next level. Maybe trial it that'd be a sneaky little upsell, wouldn't it? Because they could say, next month you get the platinum package, and then they really like platinum, so they end up upgrading anyway. Yeah, access to certain facilities, Will says, a similar sort of thing.
I've done courses before where if you complete them or go to a percentage of the sessions, and you get some money back at the end.
Okay, so it could be that they get like if the gym, if they attend a certain number of days, they get some cash back or some sort of discount.
Yeah. Well, the more you use it, the cheaper your membership is. That sort of thing as well.
Yeah. Has anyone here got any Vitality insurance?
No.
Vitality health insurance?
No.
Have you heard of it?
No.
I'm kind of a bit over it now, because I've been doing it for 2 years. When I first got it, I used to tell everyone. I never shut up about it. But it's basically it's health insurance like you get from any insurance company, but they reward you on how active you are. So I'd never worn a fitness tracker before I signed up to this health insurance. I've got like an Apple Watch, but I don't pay for the Apple Watch as long as I stay active. So if I get a certain number of points each week from my activity, they make the payments to Apple for me for the watch. I get Amazon Prime free. I get I did used to get a coffee at Starbucks every week. I get free cinema tickets every week. I get
That's good.
I get 50% off at Champneys. Honestly, it's loads of really good stuff. It's really, really good. If anyone needs health insurance, I recommend it. But it does work. Like I haven't really needed to be rewarded for my exercise that I do because I've always kind of enjoyed it. But this has made it even better because you can't help but look at your watch and go, oh yeah, gonna get all my free stuff again this week. It is nice, it does just adds a new kind of enjoyment to it, I suppose. So one of the things at an absolute basic level, you guys will need to verbal praise and encourage. So from a gym instructor's point of view, you've got tons of customers that are under your kind of supervision. So it's quite difficult to systemize a way that you can remember to verbally praise and encourage everybody, other than just keep having conversations with people. And if you need to write stuff down and keep notes on things, then do that. When you're a PT, it's quite easy to systemize it because at the end of every program that you write, you just have a little column that says notes and you just review it and you just point everything out. You go, look, let's have a look at the month. Your kettlebell swing has gone up from 20 kilos to 24. Your squat's gone up by this. There's always going to be loads of stuff to talk about. But that's really powerful. Verbal praise and encouragement is always going to be good reward. Obviously, the actual results, people like to see tangible data. So that fitness assessment stuff that you do is always going to be helpful. Graphs are quite nice. Again, a lot of apps will do that automatically now. But you can, things like Google Sheets, you can produce graphs from results quite easily. Free gifts for attendance or achievements of goals. Again, you guys are going to be self-employed PTs. What you could say is that when somebody achieves their first goal, they get a training top with your logo on it, something like that. Announcements on members boards and newsletters. So always check with clients first that they're happy with this, but some people will love a bit of public praise. If you write on your Facebook page, Jenny's done brilliant today. She was, she could do the Cooper run in this time, and now she can do it this time. She's not missed a single session. Fantastic. They'll really like it, but just make sure you check with them first because not everybody want a public announcement. Now, something else, a question you've got in your worksheet is about cognitive reframing. Has anyone heard of this before, cognitive reframing?
No.
Okay, so it's just where you take a situation and you reframe it to make it positive, basically. So instead of focusing on past failures and negatives, you just try and keep it as positive as you can. So changing negative experiences into positive ones, basically. Now, what we have to do is just always try and think as best you can, is to think rationally, not irrationally. And that's actually quite easy to do when you're the trainer. It's when you're the trainee, it's not. Like, you've probably all done it, guys. You've probably given really good advice to your friends in the past and been really rational about something and given some really great advice. But then you don't give the same advice to yourself. We seem to treat ourselves worse than we treat our friends. And if you get a client that says, oh, I put on a pound last week and I feel hopeless, I'm never going to be able to lose weight, then that's where you say, look, let's use this as a lesson. What happened last week? Let's talk through it. And then they get to learn a lot more about themselves, and we just go, okay, look, so that doesn't happen again. What can we do? What changes can we make? And you just try and keep it as positive as you can. You want to empower the client to make changes, so make sure that they always leave with the tools and the mindset that they can make this change themselves, and they can achieve anything. And this builds that self-efficacy that I mentioned before. Once you can achieve one goal, it becomes almost contagious, and you can just keep achieving more and more goals. Focus on a bright future. So if we're talking about, especially those that are really extrinsically motivated, if you just keep talking about, this is just one little step on the journey, if we just stay the course, trust the process, then you're gonna, achieve your goal at the end. Now, some of your clients are obviously going to require some healthy eating advice. If you're having conversations with them about their diet, then they're going to be needing some help with that. So this is the Eat Well Guide, and this is based on the British Nutrition Foundation. So they've come up with this guide, working alongside the government, and it basically gives an illustration of what somebody's diet on average should kind of look like. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to have a break in a moment, but we're going to work out some sort of advantages from this and some disadvantages. And there are, it gets a bit of a bad reputation in the fitness world, but there are still lots of advantages to it. It's a very, very difficult task because there's 50 million people in the UK, and to create one image that says this is how 50 million people should be eating, let's go with the positives first. So what we got? Nick's got something in the chat box. So very carb. Oh, that's the negative. We'll go with it. We'll come to that in a moment.
Yeah.
Just pop these all in the chat box then.
Yeah. If we go in there, what do you think are the good things? You can either say them out loud or type in the chat box. Don't mind.
It's quite easy to see sort of the portions of everything on that diagram.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I agree with that. Visually, it's very clear, isn't it? Quite easy to see, definitely. Anything else?
Good variety of foods.
Yeah, variety, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it focuses on a big, broad variety of foods there, doesn't it? So I guess if you're limited in your food preferences, there's quite a lot there to choose from, isn't there?
Everything on there is obviously they're not going to put McDonald's on there, but it's all clean foods. It's not like I don't really know what I'm trying to say. They're all just clean staples kind of thing.
Yeah, they haven't got like a microwave meal on there, have they? Yeah, I agree with that. Anything else?
All the food's accessible, easy to purchase.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. It's nothing too complicated in there. It also has put there weight loss, heart health, diabetes management, mood improvement. So the this food plate here, you think would be a good example of how somebody could eat for those specific goals. So heart health and weight loss and diabetes management.
For the average person that doesn't research any of these things, it's quite well laid out, showing the proportions of each different types that you should eat.
Yeah, it's not rocket science, is it? What they've got here, so it's not overly complicated. So I think you're right. Yeah. Okay. So if you look at it, basically, it's really clear, isn't it, that they're making it important for you guys to consume fruits and vegetables. So I think that's a good message. I go with that. It's very green. We know that generally green vegetables, pound for pound, are the most nutrient dense things that you can eat on the planet. Look at things like kale and spinach and broccoli, and they're packed with nutrients for what you're getting from them. So if someone's to try and eat 200 calories worth of broccoli, that's a hell of a lot of broccoli, versus 200 calories worth of a sugary drink that a kid can consume. And so there's definitely a good emphasis there. If we look at the whole grain, the starchy carbohydrate side, now we'll come to the critique of it in a moment, but one thing it does make clear, it says choose whole grain or higher fiber versions with less added salt, fat and sugar. So we definitely like the message there that's asking people to eat foods that are more whole grain. So that's where the grain's intact, which can basically suggest it's less processed. Higher fiber means it's going to work on the digestive tract as well. So it's good for the digestive system. It makes you feel fuller. You know, it's going to bind to cholesterol. There's lots of good reasons for having lots of fibre in your diet. So that's a good message there. And there's a little emphasis on having sort of oils and spreads in smaller amounts. Looks at dairies or alternatives. So if you're lactose intolerant or you're vegan, it does give an option there as well to have soy alternative. And then there's an emphasis on protein sort of based foods, isn't there? So it shows that protein is obviously important too. Beans, pulses, fish, eggs, meat, and other proteins. So if you are vegan, again, it's got alternatives there, beans and pulses. It gives an indication of, on average, how many calories we're consuming. So with this, we should consume, sorry. And now this is, a lot of you guys are going to look at that and go, well, that's, you know, I do way more exercise, and that's not very many. But don't forget, this is based on the average person. This is on an average weight person that's doing about 10,000 steps per day. And that's what that guidance is on. And a lot of people are doing way less than 10,000 steps per day. In fact, the average step, does anyone know what the average steps in the UK are that people are walking on a day-to-day basis?
Can't think.
It's about 4,000. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 4,000. About 4,000 steps per day on average is what the UK are walking. So they are quite far below the target actually. But that's not just the UK though. That's a lot of countries, or most countries actually these days. Also, it pulls out all the stuff that makes it clear we should be eating these in small amounts and less often. So it does make clear that these foods don't sit on this plate anywhere and that these should be eaten very, very infrequently. It's got an emphasis on hydration as well. So again, this is based on average. For you guys that exercise a lot, especially people with larger muscle mass, you're going to need more than that. And then over here, it's got a little bit of information on how to read a food label. So if it's green, we know that's good. And if it's red, we kind of want to avoid things with the red label, the traffic light system. Okay, so what's the stuff that we don't like about it? I mean, Nick's put up here, very, very carb heavy. So we've got a lot of starchy carbohydrates there. Fruit and veg are also carbs. So yeah, you're right. So it's really that whole bit there. It's like 3/4 of it's carbohydrate.
They're not necessarily the right kind of carbohydrates. Like you'd rather eat sweet potatoes than loads of
Yeah, so some people could be opting for, although it has got this little message here, choose whole grain.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But not everyone necessarily will be, will they? They'll just be going for the white pastas, the white breads. And the trouble with that stuff is it's because it's processed, it's so many of the nutrients have been removed that it really is just providing you with energy. So yeah, I agree with that. Anything else?
Like you said, it's for the average person, so it doesn't take into account different body types that just grouping everyone into one thing.
Yeah, so you will need to personalize a bit more than that. It is a blanket approach. So that's where you guys come in and you'll have to say, for you, this is how many calories you should be having per day. And this is how much protein. And these are your options. So it will be a bit more of a personalized approach. So like I said, it is a very, very difficult job, I think, for them to come up with a one-size-fits-all approach. It's an impossible job, really. All right. Now that plate comes with, on the NHS Choices website, it comes with 8 tips for adhering to a healthy diet. So what are the 8 healthy eating tips that come with that? Any ideas?
5 a day.
Yeah, 5 days on there.
Take exercise into account, or has it not got anything to do with that?
No, it does say that actually. It says stay active and maintain a healthy weight. So yeah, that would cover it.
Eat regular meals?
It doesn't say that actually. Must admit, we did used to talk about the whole 5 meal a day thing, but the trouble is intermittent fasting has kind of thrown a lot of that out the window. There's so much research going on about fasting, and some of the stuff that's coming through is looking quite pro fasting for the health benefits that people can get to. It's particularly even things like reversing type 2 diabetes. It's all quite new at the moment and quite young. So I would say, and this changes all the time, which is going to drive you guys mad when you go out there and try and do this job. But at the moment, I would say to people, find out an eating pattern that works for them. So for some people, that could be eating 3 meals a day. For some people, that could be eating 5 meals a day. The research at the moment doesn't show that there's a one size fits all on that one. But for you, was that Sam that said that?
No, it's me, Lynn.
Lynn, so for you personally, do you find that your energy levels are better if you eat more frequently, or?
Yeah, I'm a little and often person, really.
Yeah, and that's common. A lot of people are. So some people will. There was talk that people like yourself then that are little and often have a higher metabolism, so you'll break things down, like the amylase in your saliva will convert carbohydrates into sugar faster and push your sugar levels up quicker. So you don't eat too much to get your energy levels up. But the downside is they drop quickly too. So you're kind of looking for the next meal to pick them back up again.
Yeah, I suffer from being hungry.
yeah, that would make sense. Okay, so it says base your meals on starchy carbs. So the idea being from that is, I think the other thing they take into consideration from this is that starchy carbohydrates are fairly low cost as well. And we're trying to feed a population, and families. Then if you're going for sort of starchy carbohydrate foods, it's not going to really break the bank too much. And there's never going to be a shortage of those sorts of foods. Eat lots of fruit and vegetables. Eat fish, 2 portions, 1 oily. And again, if you're vegan, obviously that's not great advice, is it? You won't be doing that. Cut down on saturated fat and sugar. So with saturated fat, we do need to have some saturated fat in our diet, so we'd never eliminate it. But there is an argument, a fairly good argument at the moment, to say that you don't need any sugar in your diet. Even though you'll need glucose, you don't need like processed sugar, as in adding sugar to things. Eat less salt, no more than 6 grams a day for adults. Get active and be a healthy weight. And with this, what they found is like tons and tons of research looking across. They do like these literature reviews that look at 1,000 studies and pull out all the common denominators from them. And they find that there is no such thing as being healthy obese. So you can't be obese and be healthy, which I know is coming, like, that's sort of coming to the forefront at the moment, isn't it? Saying that obese clients are at a much higher risk of COVID-19 at the moment, if they do become ill. Maintain hydration, 6 to 8 glasses of water every day. How much more water do we add on if we're active?
Well, I don't even know.
Yeah, so that's the bit they leave out of there. So it's 6 to 8 glasses of water per day, unless we're doing exercise. So if we're doing exercise, on average, it's an extra litre per hour. Now that will vary depending on what your exercise is. I mean, if you're sprinting around on a football pitch on a really hot day, it's going to be even more than that. And don't skip breakfast. And I do wonder when they review this in a few years' time, whether that will still be on there. I don't know. Because the original studies for that were showing that people that ate breakfast tended to make better food choices throughout the day. Now, the fitness world kind of changed that, manipulated that a little bit, and started talking about how eating breakfast kickstarts your metabolism. But my understanding is there isn't actually any science out there that shows that that's a real thing. Mm-hmm. So your metabolism doesn't suddenly become super active and supercharged because you've eaten breakfast. What they find is if you can balance or stabilize your blood sugar levels, you tend to be more productive you tend to be nicer, and you make better choices. Whereas if your blood sugar is really low, then all you want to do is eat something that's going to get your blood sugar up really, really quickly. So you make worse choices. So that's what that original study was really based on, is just getting the sugar levels balanced. But if you eat something really bad for breakfast, so if you eat like a bowl of Cocoa Pops, for example, that's going to shoot your blood sugar up. It will then, your pancreas will then release a load of insulin. Your blood sugars will then drop quite quickly afterwards. So then you're on this kind of roller coaster throughout the day where you're looking for something really sweet to get your blood sugars up. Then it crashes, looking for something sweet to get your blood sugar up, crashes. And that just goes on throughout the day. So I would probably argue that don't skip breakfast unless it's going to be a crap breakfast, then skip it. Okay, so if we're looking at our food, so that was the Eat Well plate, which kind of looked at food groups, but there's nutrients that we need. So what are the 5 nutrients that our food provides us with?
Protein, carbohydrates, fats.
Yep. 2 more. Sam, you're right. Fibre is not technically a nutrient, but it is essential for the body. So you're right. That is on there. What are we getting? Why do the governments suggest that we need to eat 5 fruit and veg a day? Oh, look, Ilse has gone in there. Vitamins, that's one of them. Vitamins and minerals, yeah. So our macronutrients we need in large quantities. So we need grams of these per day, don't we? So you guys probably need on average 100 grams of protein a day, 200 grams of carbohydrates, whatever. So we need quite a lot of our macronutrients, but micronutrients we have in milligrams, so we need those in sort of trace amounts. How do micronutrients and macronutrients what's the difference between them, micros and the macros, if we were to put it in sort of layman's terms?
No idea.
Macronutrients are the ones we need more of.
Yeah, so macronutrients we need in much larger quantities. So a way to sort of really simplify it is we tend to say that macros give us the energy, micros unlock that energy. And so that's a kind of way of just explaining it to your clients. Now, we need water, but again, we don't, a bit like fibre, it's not technically a nutrient, but we do still need it. So all the little chemical processes that go on inside the body, we need water in order for that to happen. About 2/3 of your body is made up of water. Now, we get our calories from our food as well. And a calorie is really just a way of measuring energy. To get really geeky on you, 1 calorie is the amount of energy needed to raise 1 millimeter of water by 1 degree centigrade. So it's literally just a measure of heat, really. But we kind of get obsessed with calories and associate it with weight loss or weight gain. Any different macros have different amounts of calories. So carbohydrates have 4 calories per gram. Any ideas how many protein has?
4 as well.
Yeah,
4 as well.
4 as well. And then fats?
9.
9, yeah. What about alcohol?
Oh, there's no calories in that.
Keep
I
telling
wish.
yourself that.
Now you're thinking of crystal meth. Any ideas? 9. What's going 9? Close. Almost as many as fats. 7 in alcohol. So obviously, if you've got a client that's trying to lose weight and you're doing the food diary, sometimes you're like, oh, the diet looks really, really good, and then you realise they haven't put any of their alcohol on there, and that could be the game changer. So don't forget, that can be a significant part of their daily calorie intake when it comes to working it all out at the end of the day. I mean, MyFitnessPal's great for logging all that stuff, isn't it? And you start entering in, I don't know if you guys have ever done it, and you start entering in the beers you've had, and you're like, oh God, I need to go and run a marathon now. A lot of your clients are going to have weight loss goals. So in order for them to drop body fat, because that's what we really care about, we don't really care about losing weight as such, it's the body fat that we want to lose. They need to obviously be in what we call a calorie deficit. So a calorie deficit is where your calories in, so that's what you drink and what you eat, is less than your calories out. And your calories out is made up of your BMR, which is your basal metabolic rate, any activity that you do that day, and then something we call the thermic effect of food. So start with the BMR. What is our basal metabolic rate? Anyone know?
How fast you burn off the energy.
Say that again, Wolf.
How fast you burn off what you're eating? Well, your metabolism, how fast it is.
Yeah, so it is your metabolism, but it's your metabolism when you're at rest. So before you do any activity or anything, it's the minimum amount of calories that your body needs to sustain its bodily functions. So if you were to stay in bed all day, you would still burn off, 1,800 calories, depending on your size. Your activity, obviously, is then anything you do on top of that. So the walking you do, the standing, the exercise sessions, the sport you play, fidgeting.
I'm a massive fidgeter.
I think there's been some stuff done on that that shows that people that fidget a lot, it is actually quite a significant amount of calories at the end of the day that you burn off from fidgeting.
No cardio for me then.
And then we've got the thermic effect of food. So food, generally, they do a rough equation for this, that 10% of what you eat tends to get used up in the digestive process. So 10% of the energy from the food gets lost from actually breaking it down. And certain foods will use up more, some foods will use up less. So protein-based foods tend to sort of challenge the digestive system a bit more. So there's a lot more work involved in getting the energy from it and the calories from it. Now, if you've got clients that want to gain weight, so we're talking about muscle mass here, generally, people want to pack on more mass, then they want to be in what we call a calorie surplus. So this is the opposite. The calories in should be greater than the calories out. And it's the same thing. So calories in, obviously, what you drink, what you eat, and then calories out, BMR, activity, and the thermic effect of food. Now, there is obviously a bit more to it than that, because we want to also be making sure they're eating the right foods. But if somebody's eating less than the calories they're taking in, doesn't matter what foods they're eating, if there is less calories, they are going to lose weight. When it comes to gaining mass, it probably becomes even more important for those foods to be the right foods, because we need to make sure they're getting the right enough protein for that to be converted into myofilaments, protein in the muscles. And then obviously weight maintenance is all about balancing everything. You're never going to have a perfect balance. Some weeks you might go up a little bit, some weeks you might go down. But the reason why the guidance is that you should track that sort of stuff is because if generally, as we get older, we tend to be a bit more inactive, our muscles tend to get a bit smaller. So over time, you will gradually gain more body fat. But if you're tracking that stuff, then you can kind of act straight away rather than wait, years down the line and you're 2 or 3 stone overweight. Now, these are considered to be credible sources of information. So a credible source of information is where they use evidence-based research. So it's not just what we refer to in gyms as bro science. It's not just an idea or a theory that somebody's had. There's been some scientific research study done. And the Department of Health, NHS, Public Health England, British Medical Journal, all these guys here, they will not write any sort of or publish any articles unless there's been some research done on those. Now, as I said to you guys previously, it doesn't mean it's still gospel, doesn't mean it's all set in stone. Stuff changes all the time, but it's going to be more reliable than just some sort of bro science from down the gym. And the British Nutrition Foundation, they're the ones that come up with the Eat Well plate. Okay, let's have a look at this last bit. So, using your chat box or just say out loud, what technologies are there available to you guys to help you achieve goals? So whether that's health eating goals, moderating alcohol, sleeping better, being more active, what stuff we got out there?
Well,
Yeah,
Fitbits.
which one specific? So we've got the Fitbit, yep. Wearable technology, Nick says, yep, so that's like an Apple Watch or a Fitbit watch. What specific apps have you guys used? So Sam and Lynn, you mentioned their apps. What ones?
well, I've got my Fitness Pal.
Yeah, I've used that as well.
Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it? Definitely.
No, I don't really use any. Don't even use my Fitness Pal. I just got it.
Well, I mean, with all this stuff, it is kind of horses for courses. Some of your clients will love certain apps and others won't, and it's just the way it is. You know, you consider your clients' preferences. Some like things, some don't. But there are some really good ones out there, some really useful apps that I'd probably recommend you at least have a little play on and have a go.
Strava, that's another one I've used.
Which one, sorry?
Strava.
Strava, yeah, I've used Strava.
And in cycling.
Will's mentioned there Adidas running. I've not done that one, or Adidas training, but I've used the WOD timers are good. Yeah, I've got one of those on my phone. I use quite regularly. So I'll go through a few with you and talk about the sort of pros and cons. So this one here, the Polar one, you can buy a Polar heart rate monitor. So I think these are £65, and you basically it's called a telemetry belt. So you put that around your chest. The bit in the middle is quite close to your heart, and you can go for a run, you can go for a swim, they're waterproof as well. You can do any kind of exercise class, and it will collect information about your heart rate. Now you can, if you want to, you can have the app on your Fitbit watch or on your Apple Watch, or you can just do it straight off the app on your phone. So you can look at the data while you're doing it, or if you don't want to, you can not even take your phone with you. You can just take the belt, and then when you get back, you sync the belt with the app on your phone, and then look at the data. And it is quite nice if you go for a run or something, you can look at your average heart rate and then look at the distances you've done, and it will instantly give you that feedback as to whether you're fitter or not. Because if you did the same run the week before, but your average heart rate was higher, you know that you're better.
So are chest monitors generally more accurate than sort of wrist watches, that type of thing?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they basically the technology is the closer the receiver is to your heart, the better.
Yeah.
With the watches, so the Fitbit and the Apple Watch, it has a little camera that looks at the slight changes in color to your skin, so it can see where the blood moves in pulses through your veins.
Yeah.
So it's not terribly accurate. I think it's plus or minus 10 beats or something like that with the watches, whereas the telemetry belts are like plus or minus 1 or 2 beats, I think. But yeah, I like it anyway. I like heart rate stuff, tracking heart rate data. It is very useful. What I like about heart rate data is it takes into consideration how you're feeling on that day. So rather than, if you know that you can run a 5K comfortably at a very specific pace, you'll go out and you'll try and run it at that pace that day. And just for whatever reason, maybe your nutrition's not been on point, you haven't slept very well, you're stressed. It's really hard because you're trying to run it at your normal pace. Whereas if you try and run at a certain heart rate, on the days where you're firing on all cylinders and you're doing really well, you'll run at a faster pace. So you'll take advantage of the fact that you're actually fitter that day. But then on the days where you're not too good, you run it at a slower pace. So heart rate's good for that. That's your MyFitnessPal. So those of you who had MyFitnessPal, how has it been good for you guys?
It just comes up with reminders to like log your meals for the day, and then it tells you kind of obviously the nutrients in that and how much you need to eat for your goals.
Yeah, so you've got a few prompts and notifications to remind you to do things.
Yeah.
You can use the formulas on it to tell you what your calorie goal should be, depending on whether you want to lose weight, gain weight, stay the same. So you can use that in there. You can input your own if you want to use your own formulas as well, so you can override that stuff. What else? What are the rest of you guys that have used it?
The macros.
It's what, sorry?
Sorry, for the macros, seeing
Yeah.
how much protein and carbs and fat you get.
That's right. Yeah, you see whether you've hit enough proteins or not. And you can see relationships. If you find that on the days where you have more carbs, you actually feel like you've got more energy, that will tell you something about yourself. So you'll be like, actually, I obviously do need to have quite enough carbs. Other clients won't. They won't necessarily need that amount of carbs. They can have less. So you'll learn little things like that about yourself. It's also, it's kind of, it's probably the best thing you've got out there for manipulating your body composition. There isn't really anything else out there that's as precise as this can potentially be. It's not 100%, but it's good enough. Because all you're doing, if you're tracking your results each week, if you're getting the results that you want, you just repeat that process. If you're not losing as much as you should be, you adjust the calorie goal. If you're losing too much, you adjust the calorie goal. So you can be quite reactive with it, which I quite like. What's the downside to it?
No, I never actually properly used it. I just kind of downloaded it.
Those guys that have used it then, what have you found has been a disadvantage to it?
Get a bit obsessive with it.
Yeah, you can. Some people are quite happy to use it for months and months, but it's not really. My personal philosophy is I don't think people should be overly dependent on inputting stuff into an app multiple times a day for the rest of their lives. You know, it sounds horrible, the idea of that, but yeah, I think just be mindful of that. Your clients, you know, some clients will get great benefit doing it for a month because it makes them really understand their eating patterns.
Yeah,
there's definitely benefit to that. And you start to leave. I don't know, has anybody input cheese onto MyFitnessPal?
Again.
You just look at it and you go, oh my God, I'm never eating cheese ever again. Like it's so many calories in it, and you kind of know that, but it's not until you input it into something like MyFitnessPal, you go, oh God, it really is bad, isn't it? But so it does highlight a few things like that, but it's just encouraging people to be on their phone all the time, which I'm not a massive fan of.
For something like that, there's various degrees of accuracy as well, isn't there? You can look at one cheese and it will give you X amount of calories, and then something else give you the same, or like an egg or something like that.
Yeah.
You don't know how accurate it really is.
No, I mean, there are ways to be more accurate. Like obviously you scan the barcodes on.
Yeah, scanning works well.
Scanning's quite good. I mean, obviously be mindful that the Food Standards Agency allow a 20% leeway on what you see on food labels. So food labels can be 20% different to what you read, which is quite a lot, isn't it? But I mean, I've used it with tons of clients. I've used it myself, and it does work. It's definitely good enough. Strava. Now, this is quite nice because it gives you a visual representation of a run or a ride you've done. But it's got what they kind of try to promote here is the connecting with other people. So there'll be a route on your doorstep that tons of Strava people have done. So they've done the route and they've put their results online. and you can try and beat other people's times and things. So it adds a bit of a competition element to that, which is quite nice.
Yeah, kudos.
Yeah, kudos. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is important for some people. Well, I suppose it is for everyone really, but the downside is sometimes like exercise isn't always about beating the last thing that you did. It's one of my small issues with CrossFit. I love most of CrossFit, but one of my issues is sometimes when you go and exercise, you should just be like comfortable, and there is a point to easy runs and easy rides and easy workouts. They're still useful, and we shouldn't be trying to smash our PBs every time we're training. So that you just have to be careful of stuff like that. People getting overdoing it really. And then you've got like more basic stuff. So I've got quite a few of these little battery powered interval timers. They're really useful. Instead of just being on your phone constantly, you can get these Gym Boss timers and you can set them up for intervals. You just click them to your belt and they'll vibrate and bleep when you want them to. So I'll set up an interval timer to time my warm-ups with my clients and time my rest between sets, or if I take them for a run, you know, when we're going to sprint, it'll go off, and they're really useful and they're quite cheap. Like that, I think the Gym Boss is about 15 quid, but I've got another one in my hand at the moment that was about £7.99. It's just as good as the Gym Boss. Just look them up online. Obviously, you guys mentioned Fitbit watches and Apple watches and trackers and things. So they're again quite good for giving that instant feedback when you've done something better, or reminding you to get up if you're sitting down for too long. And then there's Vitality that I mentioned to you earlier that gives you rewards for being active, which, you know, it does work. It might not work for everyone, but it works for me. I love the fact that I get free stuff doing something that I already like doing. Okay, so that whole webinar was all focused on helping you complete that worksheet, supporting clients. As I said, 14 questions. It shouldn't take you too long to do. And then make sure you use the guidance document in Edmodo as well.